The golden cage, Benedict Wilson, stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, watching Seattle's skyline glitter beneath a gentle rainfall. At 34, he had accomplished what most people could only dream of: building Horizon, technologies from a small startup into a multi-billion-dollar company in just 8 years. Fortune magazine had featured him on their cover last month with the headline, "The Midas of Modern Tech." Yet as he pressed his forehead against the cool glass, the weight of isolation pressed back. Another day of meetings filled with people, hanging on his every word, laughing too loudly at his mild jokes, agreeing with whatever opinion he expressed. Another evening of emptiness stretching ahead. His assistant's voice crackled over the intercom. "Mr. Wilson, the sustainability team is ready for your approval on the Greenway project." Benedict straightened his charcoal gray suit and composed his features into the confident mask everyone expected. "Send them in." 5 people filed into his office, including Daniel Mercer, the sustainability director who Benedict had hired primarily for his connections to government officials rather than any passion for environmental causes. Behind him walked a woman Benedict hadn't seen before, medium height with unruly auburn hair pulled back in a practical knot, wearing simple dark slacks and a forest green blouse that stood out among the standard corporate attire. "Mr. Wilson," Daniel began with his trademark obsequious smile, "we've incorporated all your suggestions into the final proposal. I believe you'll be impressed with our projected impact statistics." While Daniel launched into his presentation, Benedict noticed the auburn-haired woman frowning slightly at certain points, her pen making occasional notes in a worn leather journal. When Daniel finished his polished pitch, Benedict asked, "Questions? Concerns?" The room fell silent. No one ever voiced concerns to Benedict Wilson. "Actually," the auburn-haired woman spoke up, "these impact projections seem optimistic, given the timeline. And the community engagement plan lacks substantive input from the neighborhoods most affected." Daniel's smile froze. The others shifted uncomfortably. "And you are?" Benedict asked, genuinely curious. "Fiona Riley, environmental science consultant. I started last week." Her voice carried no apology, no attempt to soften her critique. "Dr. Riley comes highly recommended," Daniel interjected quickly. "Top of her field in ecosystem restoration. We're fortunate to have her." Benedict studied Fiona Riley. Unlike everyone else in the room, she met his gaze directly, not with the eager-to-please expression he was accustomed to, nor with intimidation. Just straightforward assessment. "What would you suggest instead, Dr. Riley?" She opened her journal. "We need 3 more months for proper community consultation. The current approach risks creating eco-gentrification rather than true sustainability. I've outlined alternative methodologies here." Benedict accepted her journal, surprised by her clarity and lack of political maneuvering. As he glanced through her notes, he realized they addressed concerns he'd privately harbored, but that no one on his team had acknowledged. "Implement Dr. Riley's recommendations," he said, handing back the journal. "I want this project to create genuine change, not just positive press." The meeting concluded, and as the team filed out, Benedict noticed Fiona didn't join the others in their effusive "Thanks." She simply nodded and left, seemingly unaffected by his approval. That evening, Benedict attended a charity gala where he donated $1 million and received the expected adulation. Surrounded by Seattle's elite, he made the right jokes, shook the right hands, and felt absolutely nothing. Later, alone in his penthouse, he loosened his bow tie and poured himself a scotch. On his desk sat a photo of his parents. His father, who had died of cancer before seeing his son's success. His mother, who had followed 3 years later. "What's the point of all this?" he whispered to their smiling faces. "Everyone wants something from Benedict Wilson, CEO. No one sees just Benedict." Across the city, in a modest apartment filled with plants and books, Fiona Riley was reviewing ecological data while occasionally glancing at a framed photograph of a mountain lake. It showed her as a child with her grandfather, who had taught her that the true value of a person had nothing to do with their title or bank account, but everything to do with their impact on the world around them. Little did she know that her straightforward approach had created the first crack in the golden cage surrounding Benedict Wilson. Silent observations. The Horizon Technologies campus buzzed with activity as employees rushed to prepare for the upcoming quarterly review. Benedict's schedule was packed with back-to-back meetings, each filled with department heads eager to impress him with inflated projections and carefully curated success stories. By mid-afternoon, his patience had worn thin from the parade of yes men and corporate theater. "I need 15 minutes," he told his assistant, slipping out through a side door that led to the building's rooftop garden, a space designed more for promotional photos than actual use. To his surprise, someone was already there. Fiona Riley sat cross-legged on a bench, eating lunch while reviewing documents spread around her. She looked up briefly when the door opened, nodded at Benedict, then returned to her work without the usual scramble to attention that his presence typically caused. "Don't let me interrupt," Benedict said, finding her nonchalance oddly refreshing. "Wasn't planning to," she replied, moving her bag to make room on the bench. "Though if you're hiding from someone, I should warn you that Mr. Mercer has been looking for you. Something about changing the presentation to emphasize certain metrics for the investors." Benedict sighed. "Of course he is." He settled on the bench, maintaining a professional distance. The autumn air carried a slight chill, and the distant sound of traffic below created a strangely peaceful white noise. For several minutes, neither spoke. Benedict found himself studying Fiona's documents, detailed ecological impact assessments for the Greenway project, with numerous sticky notes and annotations in her precise handwriting. "You actually care about this work," he observed, breaking the silence. Fiona glanced up. "That's generally why people become environmental scientists. The question is why you care." The directness of her question caught him off guard. "What makes you think I do?" "You approved my recommendations despite the additional cost and timeline. Either you genuinely want the project done right or you're playing a long PR game I haven't figured out yet." She closed her folder. "I'm still deciding which." Benedict laughed, a genuine laugh that surprised even himself. "Fair enough." Their conversation was interrupted by Benedict's phone buzzing insistently. 3 missed calls from Daniel Mercer, 2 from his assistant. "Duty calls," he said, standing reluctantly. Fiona nodded. "The kingdom won't run itself." As Benedict headed back downstairs, he realized it was the first normal conversation he'd had in months. No hidden agendas, no excessive flattery, no careful maneuvering for favor. Just words exchanged between 2 people. Over the following weeks, Benedict found himself increasingly aware of Fiona's presence in meetings. While others nodded enthusiastically at his ideas, her expressions ranged from thoughtful consideration to skeptical frowns. She spoke only when she had something meaningful to contribute, and never to simply impress. In a world where everyone performed for his benefit, her authenticity stood out like a lighthouse on a dark shore. He began finding reasons to attend sustainability team meetings, ostensibly to monitor the Greenway project's progress, but increasingly to observe the woman who treated him like a regular human being rather than a walking opportunity. The quarterly review arrived, bringing with it the company's biggest investors. The presentation went smoothly until an aging venture capitalist named Harrison Powell raised concerns about the extended timeline for the Greenway project. "We're sacrificing immediate returns for what exactly?" Powell questioned sharply. "Goodwill from a few neighborhood committees? That doesn't translate to shareholder value." Before Daniel could respond with platitudes, Benedict noticed Fiona straightening in her chair, a flash of indignation crossing her features. He made a split-second decision. "Dr. Riley, Would you address Mr. Powell's concerns? The room fell, silent. Junior team members weren't typically asked to speak at these high-level meetings, especially not to counter a major investor's perspective. Fiona stood, composed but resolute. Mr. Powell, sustainable development isn't just about environmental impact. It's about sustainable business practices. Our research shows that genuine community integration leads to 40% higher long-term returns compared to rushed developments that generate initial resistance. She walked to the screen and pulled up data that hadn't been included in the official presentation. These are case studies from similar projects. When we invest in proper ecological foundation and community buy-in, we avoid costly litigation, reputation damage, and retrofitting expenses. The room remained tense until Powell leaned back with a thoughtful expression. Interesting approach. Different from your usual strategy, Wilson. We're evolving, Benedict replied simply. After the meeting concluded successfully, Benedict expected Fiona to seek him out, to thank him for the opportunity or leverage her moment in the spotlight. Instead, he found her in the conference room, collecting her materials while others celebrated around her. "Good work in there," he said, approaching her. "Just doing my job," she replied, though a small smile appeared briefly. "Though next time, a heads up before throwing me to the wolves would be appreciated. I knew you could handle it." Their eyes met, and for a moment something unspoken passed between them, a mutual recognition that transcended their professional roles. That evening, returning to his empty penthouse, Benedict found himself thinking about Fiona's words earlier that day. He stood before his wall of achievements, awards, magazine covers, financial milestones, and wondered when these external validations had become substitutes for genuine connection. Across the city, Fiona watered her plants while on a video call with her grandfather, now living in a retirement community in Montana. "How's the new job, Firefly?" he asked, using his childhood nickname for her. "Interesting," she replied, thinking of Benedict's unexpected vulnerability on the rooftop. "The CEO isn't exactly what I expected." "People rarely are," her grandfather said wisely, "especially the ones building walls around themselves." As she ended the call, Fiona thought about Benedict Wilson, not the famous entrepreneur whose success story was taught in business schools, but the man she had glimpsed beneath the polished exterior, a man who seemed to have everything, yet whose eyes reflected a familiar loneliness she recognized all too well. Unexpected refuge. Rain pounded against the windows of the mountain lodge as 20 of Horizon Technology's top employees arrived for the company's annual strategic retreat. Benedict stood in the great room, watching his leadership team settle, while thunder rumbled overhead. The remote location in the Cascade Mountains had been chosen specifically to force everyone to disconnect from daily distractions and focus on the company's future direction. "Perfect weather for brainstorming," remarked Olivia Winters, the marketing director, sliding up beside Benedict. "I've prepared some concepts I'd like to discuss privately with you tonight." Her smile carried implications beyond professional collaboration. Benedict gave a non-committal response, having grown accustomed to these thinly veiled advances that had more to do with his position than himself. His attention shifted as Fiona entered, shaking raindrops from her jacket. Unlike others who had packed business-casual attire, she wore hiking boots and practical layers, her auburn hair in a simple braid. "Dr. Riley," he acknowledged, surprising himself with the quiet pleasure he felt at her arrival. "Mr. Wilson?" she replied with a small nod, before turning to help another team member with their luggage. The first day's sessions progressed predictably. Presentations, on-market projections, competitor analyses, and strategic opportunities. Benedict observed how his executives performed for him, each trying to outshine the others. Only Fiona remained focused on substance rather than impression, challenging assumptions and offering perspectives that considered long-term impacts beyond quarterly profits. As evening approached, a park ranger arrived with concerning news. The storm's intensified. The access road is flooded and we're expecting a landslide risk overnight. Everyone needs to stay put until conditions improve. The announcement sent ripples of concern through the group. Cell service was already spotty, and now they faced potential power outages. Benedict watched his team's reactions, some immediately, sought to leverage the situation for FaceTime with him, while others complained about missed connections and appointments. "We should check the lodge's emergency supplies," Fiona suggested practically, "and reinforce the windows on the north side where the wind is strongest." Benedict made quick decisions, organizing teams for various preparations. "Fiona, let's inventory the supplies." They made their way to the storage areas, working methodically through emergency kits and provisions. In the basement supply room, away from the performance arena upstairs, Benedict felt himself relaxing. "You've done this before," he observed, watching Fiona efficiently organize supplies. "I spent 5 years doing field research in remote locations," she replied, checking the batteries in a flashlight. "When you've weathered monsoon season in a research station in Borneo, you learn to prepare." Quite different from corporate boardrooms. More honest, usually, she glanced at him. Though sometimes surprising similarities emerge. As they worked, Benedict found himself sharing stories from his early entrepreneurial days, sleeping on friends' couches, coding through the night, the terrifying leap of faith when he left his stable job to pursue his vision. Fiona listened, without judgment, occasionally offering insights that revealed her own journey from a small Montana town to becoming a respected environmental scientist. "Why did you join Horizon?" he asked finally. "We're hardly known as an environmental champion." Fiona paused, considering her answer. "Your Greenway project could actually make a difference if done right. I've spent years documenting environmental decline. I wanted to be part of building something better for a change." She met his eyes directly. "And I believed you might actually care beyond the PR value." Her honesty struck him deeply. "I founded this company to create technology that improves lives," he admitted. "Somewhere along the way, growth and profits became the metric for everything." "It's not too late to remember your why," she said simply. A crash of thunder punctuated her words, and seconds later, the lights flickered and died, plunging them into darkness. Benedict felt Fiona's hand grip his arm, steadying herself. He switched on the flashlight they'd just checked. "Perfect timing," he remarked dryly. As they navigated back upstairs with supplies, the atmosphere in the lodge had transformed. Without electricity, the usual hierarchies seemed diminished. People gathered around the fireplace, using candles and emergency lights. Benedict observed his team adapting, some rising to the challenge, others revealing unexpected vulnerabilities. Daniel Mercer appeared lost without his digital presentations and corporate trappings. Meanwhile, Fiona organized a system for conserving resources and keeping everyone comfortable, her practical knowledge earning respect from colleagues who had previously overlooked her. As the night progressed, Benedict found himself sitting beside Fiona near the fire, while others had retreated to their rooms. The crackling flames cast shifting shadows across her face as she sketched something in her ever-present journal. "What are you working on?" he asked. She hesitated before turning the journal toward him. It wasn't work at all. She had been drawing the scene before them, capturing the way the firelight played across the rustic lodge interior. "You're talented," he said, genuinely impressed by the emotional quality she'd captured. "Just something I do to process thoughts," she replied, looking slightly embarrassed. "My grandfather taught me. He said drawing forces you to truly see what's in front of you, not just what you expect to see." Wise man. He was a park ranger for 40 years. Taught me everything important, including how to judge a person by their actions, not their words or position. Benedict felt transparent under her gaze. "And how am I being judged?" The question hung between them, more vulnerable than he'd intended. "Still deciding," she answered with a small smile. "But I'm seeing more of the person behind the CEO these days." In that moment, with rain lashing against the windows and firelight dancing across her features, Benedict felt something shift within him, a wall beginning to crumble. Here in this unexpected refuge from the normal patterns of his life, he found himself wanting Fiona to know him, the real him, not the carefully constructed public figure or the powerful executive. "I haven't felt like myself in a long time," he admitted quietly. "I'm not sure I even remember who that is anymore." Fiona closed her journal. "Maybe that's what storms are for sometimes. They wash away the surface so we can see what's underneath." As the night deepened and the storm continued its assault on the mountain, they talked about things that had nothing to do with business: favorite books, childhood memories, hopes that had nothing to do with career trajectories or financial success. For the first time in years, Benedict wasn't performing the role of CEO. He was simply being himself. And in Fiona's attentive gaze, he found something he hadn't realized he was missing: the feeling of being truly seen. The breaking point. The aftermath of the mountain retreat brought subtle but significant changes to Horizon Technologies. Benedict found himself evaluating decisions differently, weighing not just profitability but purpose. The executive team noticed his increased interest in the Greenway project, which had evolved from a simple PR initiative into something more meaningful under Fiona's guidance. On a crisp November morning, Benedict arrived at the office earlier than usual. The first rays of sunrise painted the Seattle skyline in gold and pink hues as he reviewed the quarterly reports. Something in the financial statements caught his attention: discrepancies in the international expansion budget that seemed deliberately obscured. He was still analyzing the numbers when Daniel Mercer arrived, startled to find Benedict already at work. "Early morning, sir," Daniel said, failing to hide his discomfort. "I've been reviewing the Shanghai expansion figures," Benedict replied evenly. There seemed to be inconsistencies. Daniel's smile remained fixed, but his eyes hardened. "Just accounting? Adjustments. Nothing to concern yourself with. Schedule a meeting with finance for this afternoon. I want a complete audit." After Daniel left, Benedict continued his investigation, uncovering a pattern that suggested possible embezzlement and backroom deals with vendors. The evidence pointed to a conspiracy involving several senior executives, people he had trusted for years. At noon, Benedict stepped out for air, finding himself drawn to the rooftop garden. As if by unspoken agreement, Fiona was there, reviewing environmental impact data from the Greenway project's first phase. "You look troubled," she observed, setting aside her work. Benedict hesitated, then made a decision. "What I'm about to tell you doesn't leave this rooftop." He outlined what he'd discovered, watching her expression shift from surprise to understanding. "You don't seem shocked that trusted executives might betray me," he noted. Fiona considered her words carefully. "Power attracts people who want proximity to it. Some are genuine, many aren't." She met his gaze directly. "What will you do?" "What I have to," he replied. The afternoon unfolded like a carefully orchestrated drama. Benedict called an emergency board meeting, presenting evidence of the financial misconduct. Daniel and two other executives attempted to deflect, then denied everything. When cornered with irrefutable proof, they launched a desperate counterattack. "Benedict has lost objectivity," Daniel argued to the board members. "He's been distracted, making decisions based on personal interests rather than shareholder value. The extended timeline on the Greenway project, the resources diverted to community initiatives, all influenced by his inappropriate relationship with a junior employee." The accusation hung in the air. Benedict maintained his composure, though, Anger flared within him, not at the attack on himself, but at Daniel's attempt to damage Fiona's reputation. "This is about financial fraud, not deflection tactics," Benedict stated coldly. "The evidence speaks for itself." After hours of tense discussion, the board sided with Benedict. Daniel and the implicated executives were escorted from the building, but the damage control was just beginning. By evening, industry blogs were buzzing with rumors of both the fraud and the alleged inappropriate relationship. Horizon's stock dropped 5 points in after-hours trading. Benedict worked late into the night with the legal team, hardly noticing the hours passing until a soft knock interrupted them. Fiona stood in the doorway, 2 cups of coffee in hand. "Thought, you might need this," she said, placing one on his desk. The legal team tactfully excused themselves for a break. "You should go home," Benedict told her, suddenly aware of how this interaction might appear given Daniel's accusations. "Your name is being dragged into this mess. I'm sorry." "I'm not concerned about gossip," she replied calmly. "You should be. Your professional reputation stands on its own merits." Fiona sat across from him. "But that's not why I'm here. How are you holding up?" The simple question, genuine concern rather than professional calculation, hit him unexpectedly hard. The facade of control he'd maintained all day began to crack. "I trusted them," he said quietly. 8 years building this company together, and the whole time, "It's not a reflection on you," she offered. "Isn't it? I surrounded myself with people who told me what I wanted to hear, who never challenged me. I created this environment, and now you can change it." Benedict looked at her, really looked at her, and saw unwavering support despite the professional risk to herself. "Why are you still here, Fiona? Your name is being linked to mine in the worst possible way. The smart move would be distance. I've never been particularly interested in the smart move," she replied with a hint of a smile. "Just the right one." Something shifted between them in that moment, a boundary crossing from professional respect into something deeper. Benedict realized with startling clarity that Fiona had become essential to him, not for what she could do for his company, but for how she helped him see himself. "There will be fallout from this," he warned. "The press, the industry gossips, former employees with grudges, they'll all come after Horizon after me, and now, after you too. Then we weather it," she said simply, "like the storm at the lodge." The next morning brought the expected media frenzy. Benedict arrived to find photographers outside the building, and his inbox flooded with press inquiries. The board called an emergency session to discuss crisis management. As Benedict prepared to face them, his assistant delivered a message. Fiona had requested a temporary reassignment to field work for the Greenway project. His heart sank, assuming she had reconsidered the wisdom of being associated with him during the scandal. Then he read her note. "Not running away, but you need space to fight this battle without complications. The Greenway communities need someone on the ground now more than ever, a visible commitment that Horizon's mission continues despite the chaos. Trust yourself. Remember your why. I'll be where I'm needed most." Understanding dawned. Even in stepping back, she was supporting both him and the work that mattered. She wasn't abandoning him. She was giving him room to rebuild, while protecting what they had begun together. Benedict entered the board meeting with renewed clarity and purpose. This crisis would either break Horizon Technologies or transform it into something stronger, something truer to the vision he had originally held. As he addressed the concerned board members, Benedict realized he was no longer the isolated figure at the top of a corporate pyramid. For the first time in years, he felt connected to something beyond success and status, to purpose, to integrity, and to someone who saw him clearly through it all. That night, amid the continuing crisis, he sent a simple text to Fiona. "Thank you for seeing what needed to be done, for seeing me." Her reply came minutes later. Always have. Beyond reflections, 3 months after the financial scandal, Horizon Technologies had weathered the worst of the storm. Benedict had overseen a complete restructuring of the executive team, prioritizing integrity and shared values alongside talent. The stock price had recovered as investors responded to the company's transparent handling of the crisis and renewed focus on meaningful innovation. The Greenway project had become Horizon's unexpected flagship, generating positive press that helped counter the scandal's aftermath. What began as a sustainability initiative had evolved into a model for responsible corporate development, one being studied by other tech companies. On a clear February morning, Benedict's helicopter touched down at the main Greenway site. Construction. Crews worked alongside community volunteers, transforming the once-neglected area into a harmonious blend of green space, affordable housing, and technology-integrated community resources. Fiona stood among a group of local environmental activists, her hair now cut shorter for practicality, her skin slightly tanned from months working outdoors. She spotted Benedict and excused herself from the conversation. "Welcome to the front lines," she greeted him, professional but warm. "I wasn't expecting an executive visit today." "I needed to see it," he replied simply. They walked the site together, Benedict observing the progress while site managers and community leaders approached with updates and questions. He noticed how seamlessly Fiona moved between groups, respected by the scientists for her expertise, by the community members for her genuine commitment, and by the construction teams for her practical problem-solving. "You've built something remarkable here," he told her, when they found a moment alone, standing on a ridge overlooking the entire project. "We all have," she corrected gently. Benedict studied her face, noting the subtle changes that went beyond the haircut and tan. There was a confidence, a centeredness that hadn't been there before. Their communication over the past months had been primarily professional. Project updates, occasional video conferences with the team, brief messages acknowledging milestones. Both had maintained a careful distance as the company stabilized, and rumors subsided. "The board meeting is tomorrow," he said, shifting to the reason for his visit. "They'll be voting on the expansion of Greenway to 3 additional cities. I want you to present." Fiona looked surprised. "Shouldn't that come from you or the new sustainability director?" "It should come from the person who made it real, who understood its value when it was just a concept on paper." He paused. "Besides, I have another announcement to make, and I wanted to speak with you about it first." Something in his tone made her give him her full attention. "What announcement?" "I'm stepping down as CEO." Her expression registered shock. "Benedict, if this is because of the scandal—" "It's not," he assured her. "At least not in the way you think. The crisis forced me to reevaluate everything, what I want, why I built Horizon, what matters beyond success." He gazed out at the project spread below them, people working together to create something beneficial and lasting. "I founded this company to build technology that improves lives. Somewhere along the way, I lost sight of that purpose and became isolated in the process. I want to get back to innovation, to creating, to working directly with ideas rather than managing perceptions." "What will you do?" she asked. "I'll remain on the board, but I'm launching a foundation focused on technological solutions for environmental and community challenges, taking the Greenway model global but with the freedom to work hands-on rather than through corporate structures." Understanding dawned in her eyes. "You're going back to your roots." "With everything I've learned since." He turned to face her, fully. "I'd like you to consider joining me, not as an employee, but as a partner. Your environmental expertise combined with my tech background, we could build something meaningful together." The proposition hung between them, layered with professional and personal implications. Fiona looked away, gathering her thoughts. "When we met," she said finally, "I saw someone trapped by his own success, surrounded by people who only reflected back what he wanted to see. I never intended to become important to you. I just couldn't pretend. Your inability to pretend saved me. Benedict replied quietly. You saw me when I had forgotten how to see myself. A project manager approached, needing Fiona's input on an ecological question. She excused herself, promising to continue their conversation later. Benedict watched her walk away, confident and purposeful, respected for exactly who she was rather than for any title or connection. That evening, they sat in a small local restaurant near the project site, far from the upscale establishments, where Benedict typically conducted business dinners. The owners knew Fiona by name and treated Benedict not as a famous CEO, but simply as her friend. I've been offered a research position at the University of Washington, Fiona revealed as they finished dinner, leading a department focused on urban ecological restoration. Benedict felt a conflicting rush of pride and disappointment. That's well-deserved. They'd be lucky to have you. I haven't accepted yet, she added, watching his reaction carefully. Your foundation proposal is compelling. I'd have more practical impact than in academia. Is impact the only consideration? Their eyes met across the table, acknowledging the unspoken question between them. No, she admitted. It's not. After dinner, they walked along a path through part of the completed greenway. Lights illuminated the winding trail where local residents jogged and children played despite the evening hour. Community gardens flourished beside technological innovations, solar-powered charging stations, interactive educational displays, and air quality monitoring systems disguised as artistic installations. Remember when you asked how I was judging? You, Fiona said as they reached a small bridge over a restored stream. During the storm at the lodge? I remember. I've made my assessment, she said with a small smile. The man who prioritized helping communities over rebuilding his reputation after the scandal, who listens more than he speaks now, who remembers the maintenance staff's names and asks about their families, who's walking away from power to return to purpose. She turned to face him. That's someone I'd be proud to build something with, professionally and personally. Benedict felt a weight lifting that he hadn't realized he'd been carrying. When did you know? That there could be more between us? Probably that day on the rooftop when you actually listened to my criticism instead of firing me, she laughed, softly. But I wouldn't let myself acknowledge it until I was sure we could be equals, despite all the external differences. We've always been equals, he said seriously. You just saw it before I did. The next day, Benedict stood before the board and announced his decision. Cameras flashed and reporters scribbled notes as he outlined his vision for the foundation and introduced his chosen successor as CEO, a thoughtful, principled executive who had helped navigate the company through the recent crisis. Fiona presented the Greenway expansion with characteristic clarity and conviction, impressing the board with both detailed data and compelling vision. When questioned about her future role, she confirmed she would be joining Benedict's new foundation as environmental director and equal partner. As they left the boardroom, a reporter called out, "Mr. Wilson, after everything you've built, isn't this a step down? Aren't you worried about losing your influence?" Benedict glanced at Fiona before answering. I've learned that true influence isn't about position or power. It's about creating meaningful change alongside people who value integrity over status. He smiled. I'm not stepping down. I'm stepping forward. 6 months later, the Wilson Riley Foundation opened its headquarters in a renovated warehouse at the edge of the original Greenway. The space embodied their shared philosophy, environmentally sustainable, technologically innovative, and deeply integrated with the surrounding community. Benedict's office featured just one item from his former corporate life, a simple frame containing the Fortune magazine cover that had once proclaimed him the Midas of modern tech. Beside it hung a new headline from Sustainable Business Quarterly, Beyond Gold, How Benedict Wilson and Fiona Riley Are Redefining Success. On their 1-year anniversary, Fiona presented Benedict with a drawing, the sketch she had made of him, during the storm at the mountain lodge, before either of them understood how their paths would intertwine. In it, firelight illuminated his features as he gazed into the distance, a man at a crossroads, poised between isolation and connection. Beneath it, she had written, "To seeing and being seen, the greatest gift we can give each other." Benedict placed it carefully on his desk, next to a photograph of them surrounded by community members at the Greenway opening celebration. In both images, his smile reached his eyes. "A year ago," he told her, taking her hand, "I had everything, according to the world's standards, and nothing that truly mattered. You taught me to see beyond reflections, to recognize the difference between being surrounded and being connected." Fiona squeezed his hand. "We built something real," she said, simply. Outside their window, the Greenway flourished, trees growing stronger, communities thriving, technology serving purpose rather than profit alone. Like the roots systems Fiona had taught him about, connections ran deep beneath the visible surface, creating foundations that would support growth for generations to come. The man who once had everything had found something beyond material success: purpose aligned with passion, work integrated with meaning, and love built on the foundation of being truly seen. And in that seeing, both Benedict and Fiona had discovered their most authentic selves, reflected not in admiration or expectation, but in understanding and genuine connection. Beyond the golden cage, beyond the breaking point, they had created something neither could have built alone: a life where success was measured not in fortunes made, but in lives touched, and in the quiet joy of walking forward together.